Hi friends, I'm Beth and I'm back with another episode of How I'm Doing It. Today is an exciting day. I got my Ancestry results back. This is when I sent off a DNA sample of saliva a few weeks ago. I had ordered a kit from Ancestry.com that said it could tell me about my genetic history based strictly off my DNA. It's been kind of fascinating, honestly. I did not find any major scandals or surprises in terms of people ask, well, what if you find out you've got long lost relatives you didn't expect? Or what if any of your ancestors, had extra family members or something of this type? No major scandals. In fact, honestly, I was actually surprised by how little genetic variation there is in terms of where my family came from. Now, this only goes back, it says, about 1,000, 1,500 years. So before that, there's a lot of theories in modern anthropology, geography, things like that about where people came from originally. But from the last 1,000, 1,500 years, I'm going to show you that my ancestry was from a very small area of Northwest Europe. So a lot of us who live in the South, you may know I live in Tennessee now, but originally I was born and spent part of my raising in Georgia. This is the United States. So Tennessee, United States of America, and Georgia, United States of America. This is in the southeastern part of the United States of America. Now, in this part of the country, it's very common for people, even if they don't know it, to have traces of other parts of different types of people in their background. No matter what someone looks like, you'll find people with different races in their background that they may not be expecting. In this part of the country, we have a very tragic history with slavery. We also have mixed history in other areas. For instance, the Native Americans who lived here before the white settlers came from across the ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, to this area. Now, one of the things that people love to say, no matter how pale-skinned a person is, like me, is there's always been some family stories about way back that we had an Indian chief in our family or this or that. And not just my family. That's a common story that you'll hear amongst people in different parts of this area. That does not seem to be borne out by these DNA test results. So, I was hoping there would be something kind of fascinating and I would finally get some more information on this mysterious Indian chief that we were supposed to have had in our history. But maybe that's just a tale. Maybe that's just an interesting, fun story that people like to tell that gets passed down through oral tradition. I don't know. But what's interesting is, and I'll show you the map here in just a second, I am actually full on 50% Scottish. I did not expect that. I really expected it would be more of a mixture of a larger area of Europe, perhaps, but 50% Scottish. We've got 25% England. And then 17% Ireland, 3% Wales, and then 5% Norway. None of this really surprises me except in terms of how much it is, because I really did think I would have traces of other types of races of people. But a lot of it makes sense. We do have those traditional traits that I don't even need a DNA test to prove, because the DNA test did come back and say, we bet you have pale skin and light colored hair and probably have light colored eyes. And I thought, yep, I do. So let me give you a map here and see if I can show you. I hope that me filming this in this camera through my computer screen translates well. We'll see. I hope it looks good. Okay, so here we see 50% Scottish. Then, like I said, these are my other percentages. I've got 5% here. Now, this is the world map, okay? This is where my family came from 1,000, 1,500 years ago. And then at different points during the history, we came across the ocean, evidently, and settled in this area. In particular, if you look here, we were central Georgia settlers in the largest quantity. We also went and settled part of eastern North Carolina and more southern states like central Georgia and central Alabama. Now, this is true. I was born in Georgia, as were my parents and a lot of extended family. So this is very, very close. It was shockingly close. It really amazed me how they could zero in on that, particularly this area of the central and north Georgia area. That was really remarkable. I was impressed with that. And so, yeah, this really tight area, basically Scotland, England, Wales, Ireland, and this program counts what would be Iceland and Norway together. So yeah, there you go. I have heard and read and found it to be true for myself that people with pale colored eyes tend to have more trouble or sensitivity to the sun, need darker sunglasses more often than people might who have darker colored eyes. And it may have to do with the fact that when we were genetically, our genetic makeup of being in this part of the world, we had more indirect light from the sun. We were not used to sunlight being as bright as perhaps others that were more closer down in lower latitudes. So our eyes just adapted. Now, that said, I do see extraordinarily well in low light. That's not a problem. So I think that may have just been part of this genetic history. One of my sons in particular has this as well, very sensitive eyes, prefers to keep the lights off. Now there is a section about traits. So one of them that did surprise me is that I had this result about caffeine. It says, based on your DNA, we think you might drink more caffeine than average. I did not know that that was a gene DNA type of an issue. I had no idea there was a correlation. So this surprised me. And yes, it asks you if it's true or not. It'll ask you little questions. And I answered yes. I have 5 to 6 caffeinated drinks a day. Sometimes 7. I try to limit myself to 7, but evidently 7% of other Ancestry members who have this region in their DNA answered the same way I did. So I've got a very, let's just be real here. I've got a very strong appreciation for caffeine. My parents did not drink coffee, which is a very common drink here in the United States. However, they're big tea drinkers. In the South, we drink sweet tea, primarily sweet iced tea. Nowadays, just for health reasons, I have cut back to unsweet tea. I don't like the taste of it, but I love the way it makes me feel. I drink coffee nowadays. Once I had several children, I found it important and worthwhile to start drinking coffee in the morning. I usually have 3 cups of coffee before I even get to work in the morning. And then by the time lunch is rolling around, my coworkers can tell you that I'm already talking about what kind of caffeinated drink are we going to have with lunch today. So yeah, that's a thing. And I tend to keep like energy drinks nearby at home or even in my desk drawer at work. So yeah, maybe I'm always jonesing for my next caffeine fix. But yeah, that was a surprise. And I have an aunt who also really appreciates various Coke products and tea products as well. So that's in our DNA, evidently. Who knew? Now, here's another one that I could have told you from observation, but it was very interesting to see it actually reflected in my DNA. This part here, male hair loss. Now, of course, I'm female. However, it says your DNA suggests you or your close male relatives have a low chance of hair loss. So that's true. In fact, in my family, amongst ourselves over the generations, we have always remarked about how the men in our family keep their hair. In fact, my father, who went through several rounds of chemo for various cancers, whenever he would lose his hair with the chemo, as soon as he finished chemo, his hair would start growing back, and he had a full head of hair up until the very end. So that gives hope to my male children. Now, it does say in here that further down, if you keep scrolling and click on some other things, it can tell you that there are other factors, and it's not necessarily just on the mother's side, but that the father's side can influence it too. But for my side of the family, my kids have some good DNA to hopefully hold on to their hair. Okay, another one, the sprinter gene. I've never heard of this before, but it says that my DNA tells us you have the sprinter gene. It plays a role in how my muscles work. So short distance runners, it talks about, can benefit from it, and other types of athletes. I've never been much of an athlete on a regular basis. I like to do certain things like swimming or various things like that. But when I was in high school, I did join the track team. I did enjoy it. I did used to go running a lot. My dad ran just for enjoyment and health reasons. He was a jogger in our town. So maybe that has something to do with it. It talks about there's fast twitch muscles and slow twitch muscles, and evidently I have fast twitch muscles. So there you go. Now, here's another one that was interesting to me, sun sneezing. This is a gene-related phenomenon. My DNA suggests that I may sneeze when exposed to bright light. That is absolutely true. I've known that since I was a child. It always actually surprises me that other people do not have that type of reaction. But evidently, that's because it's genetics. So in here, it says bright light does make me sneeze. 34% of other Ancestry members in this region with this DNA answered the survey the same way that I did. There's evidently markers on two chromosomes, chromosome 2 and chromosome 15. It's called the photic sneeze reflex, and it affects, it says, between 18 to 35% of the population, and it's a dominant trait. So yeah, that is totally true. And yeah, it's nice to have some kind of explanation behind it, that it's, you know, gene-related DNA. Okay, in closing, there's a few things to be said about the DNA process, whether you use Ancestry or another different company out there. One of the things is you have to have an open mind. You are going to come into this with the idea of what you expect your family tree to look like, and the stories that you've been told throughout your generations, perhaps, if you live in a family where you've known your biological relatives for a long time. I fully expected to see Cherokee Indian in my history, and there is none, at least according to this DNA model. Whether you use Ancestry or any other of the DNA companies, you need to be open-minded to that. You may find relatives you did not know existed. You never know. There were different things that may have happened, scandals that may have happened, or just people misunderstanding information of their family tree or how their family came to be in a certain area. You got to be ready for that. Now, I did not find any what people would qualify as scandals per se, but if I had, I wouldn't have been too bent out of shape about it. I was really, at this stage in my life, in my 40s, I'm just more interested in finding out, you know, where did we come from, regardless of different types of things that may have brought us to this point. And then there is also the part people talk about where the law enforcement agencies have used DNA matching before in order to catch various criminals of certain notoriety. You can Google search those and find out. Now, I'm not worried about that. Honestly, if I had some kind of massive, tremendous criminal in my family tree, really, I would want that person to get caught just to make the community or the world safer. There was a serial killer who was caught from DNA from one of these, and they managed to find it because I think they got a distant relative had submitted their DNA and it showed up and brought a match. And I don't know, the investigators pulled a lot of things together based on where they lived and whatnot. I can't even remember the person's name. I just remember it was an issue. I'm not worried about that. Also, privacy concerns, I'm not terribly worried about that in terms of DNA. Reason being, for myself or my children, and all of you know I have several children, we've got a large family, I'm not worried about that because years ago, I donated bone marrow to a stranger. I participated in the National Marrow Donor Program, and at the time, between that program and other worldwide programs that connected and coordinated, there was over 20 million members of us who had submitted DNA in hopes of matching to donate bone marrow. So my DNA is already on file, and I agreed to participate in a medical study that lasted several years, and they allowed them to take blood specifically for that study in addition to donating the bone marrow. So at that time, my marrow was used to save the life of a 50-year-old woman several years ago who had leukemia. So my blood, I've already figured, is out there in a storage facility somewhere, and that doesn't bother me. I feel like, I've already voluntarily given my DNA structure and things to other people for study anyway. My kids, their father has given his DNA sample in a blood sample to a medical study as well several years ago. So we both feel like, we wanted to participate in those medical studies for the benefit of humankind in the future generations, whether it had to do with us or other people. So this did not bother me in the least. Now, it may give you pause. Also, a couple of my children have been adopted. We adopted them from other families who are no relation to us whatsoever. No genetic link at all. These were basically stranger adoptions, if you can call it that. Over the years, of course, especially with one of the birth mothers, I've become good friends with her. We call each other sisters of the heart, but there's no genetic link. Now, if those children decided one day that they might like to do an ancestry match so that they can learn more about their genetic history, I would support whatever their choice is. But for my biological children, they can take some of the information from this set of data that I got for myself. Anyway, just lots of things to think about. It was money well spent. I mean, I think I got it on sale. They were running a deal. It was a little over $100. But, I mean, great entertainment, and it answers a lot of questions and gave me some surprises. Who knew? I'm solidly 50% Scottish, and then basically 75% if you add the Scottish and the Wales and the England together with, just a little bit of Norway, 17% Irish. That probably explains my little girl's red hair. Anyway, just kind of fascinating. So thanks for coming along and listening to me tell my story. I enjoy talking about my family, and I appreciate every single one of you who have come by here today to follow up with me and see whatever became of my Ancestry DNA test kit. Thank you all for joining me. I hope everyone has a good week. Until next time, that's how I'm doing it.